Welcome to the High Agency Podcast with your host, Noah Revoys.
Good morning, everyone. And today's topic is agency and single mothers. So we're asking two very important questions. Do single mothers have agency? And the other question is, how could agency development help single mothers to be better women, better mothers, and also perhaps even to become a better wife one day? My guest today is Michelle German, who is a friend of mine and a client for a long time. And she is an expert at what single mothers need to do to improve themselves. And she runs a Twitter a feed called High Agency Woman, and also a website with, I think, the same name. And she's going to help to share with us her perspective as someone who is a single mother who's developed her agency and through that become a better mother and a better woman. Thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Hi, Noah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it really is an interesting question, and it's a little bit clickbait because the idea of does so and so have, does X have agency is, it's not really a fair question because agency isn't a binary. You don't have or not have it. You have a degree of agency. So, maybe an unconscious person has no agency. Beyond that, as long as you're conscious, you have some degree of agency. You have perhaps only a very little bit. A baby maybe has no agency. My nearly 8-year-old son, at this point, you should be able to trust your kids to have some agency, to not tear the house apart, when you're not looking, that kind of stuff. They have a certain level of control over themselves, certainly not equal to what would be expected of an adult, but it's age-appropriate levels of agency. And the real question is there a lack of agency amongst single mothers that lead them to be single mothers? And exactly what is that dynamic around agency? And that's what we're going to explore today.
That's a great question. I agree. I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding of what agency is and how it ties into single motherhood. Of course, we're talking in general terms, and that there are exceptions under all such circumstances, but definitely ties into one another.
Yes, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that the individual's personal agency is all that matters, and that's something that we've explored in talking privately, but also this is actually a reoccurring theme with a lot of clients, and I've tweeted about it. That it's not just our individual agency, it's do we have people around us with high agency that can give us advice? And it's not because they're going to tell us what to do or they're going to boss us around, but a lot of women who become single mothers, they don't have especially high agency men around them to ask questions and to have those men ask them questions to stimulate the kind of thinking that helps them to make good decisions about relationships. And I'm a high agency man. I make good decisions in general. One of the good decisions I would make if I was ever single again would be to get help to make sure that I married well when if I remarried. And this is because knowing your limitations is one of the key factors to having agency. And we all have a limitation as an individual. We have a limitation to how much we know, to what our experience is, and we tend to be blind to our own weaknesses. And that's why it's important to have that high agency pool of talent around you to help you out. And I think a lot of single mothers are really lacking someone that they can talk to, a mature man, a mature woman, and they can ask them questions. And it's not just when they become a single mother, it's even afterwards to help them figure out how to have a happy life.
Absolutely. I really love what you touched on, especially with the remarrying part. It is something that I do in my practice as well. While it doesn't necessarily need to be traditional, I do focus on helping single mothers not stay single mothers for the rest of their life, but helping them understand that the influences they had growing up, whether it was parental, educational, societal, how it may have undermined them and left them in a position when they are raising children by themselves. Now, a lot of moms may have a father of their children or fathers of their children that are in and out of their life. Some are more steady, but single mothers generally means that they are doing more of the work than the other parent. And again, that's all generalization, and there are exceptions. But I think one of the key elements to helping you get agency is acknowledging that you had some part in the outcome of where you are. Because I think a lot of single mothers hit a point where they're very tired, they're very frustrated. Sometimes they're even desperate. It's like a quiet pain that they carry with themselves, and they don't know where to turn because, like you said, there aren't enough high agency people around them. So I help them focus on what can you do to improve your life, because when you can improve your life through self-care, through knowledge, and through action, you can change your life not only for yourself but for your children, and also be an asset to your community as a whole.
Yes, I have known women that said, I know I don't have a pool of high agency people around me to help me make decisions. And because of that, they've postponed relationships. They have sought that out. And so you're right, there is a responsibility on the woman. It's a shared responsibility. The woman has some responsibility for her actions, and society has a responsibility for creating an incitement towards behaviors that end up as single mothers. The undermining of both men and women. I think the undermining of men is almost as responsible, or perhaps close to as responsible, for the rise in single mothers as the undermining of women. By undermining the value of men, it's made it more difficult for women to find the kind of high agency man that makes a good father, that makes a long-term stable partner. And you combine that with the undermining of the attitudes that women have about men, it makes it hard for them to find it as well. So really doing that, someone mentioned there are married women. One of our commenters said there's married women who are often like single moms. I think they also can benefit from this. I would say a single mom can almost be not just defined by the fact that she's currently unmarried, but by the fact that she does not have a man to take the lead in her life.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be technically married, but no man is actually doing the job of leading the woman. That's just pretty much the same as being a single mother.
Yeah.
He ends up being your oldest child to some extent. And some women, yes, they infantilize their husband. Some men infantilize themselves. And so we have this combination of situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think that society as a whole has undermined men to be protectors, and there's all the big rise over the last 40, 50 years of this. It's almost like propaganda telling women, you can do everything and be everything, and you are equal to a man. And I think a lot of people forget that, we don't need to be equal. We need to be complementary. Men can carry heavy burdens and hard decision making over a long period of time better than women. If we are to focus on raising children, perhaps tending to the home, or maybe you are like myself, geared to um, a little side business or something where you feel like you're contributing to the home, so that maybe you're not particularly very traditional, and that's okay too. But if you're a single mom and you are doing all the provision and all the protecting and all the nurturing over a long period of time, it leaves women with very little time to grow further into themselves. And if they don't have the social circle around them, like let's say I see a lot of single moms hanging out with a lot of single moms, and they're all talking about, the father of the child or the thing that happened to them, but nobody's discussing solutions. Nobody's talking about how you can get ahead. And that's where I think coaching is an excellent, I know myself with you, having had coaching by you, you've definitely helped me see some very hard blind spots in what was hindering me based on my own actions. Because there comes a point where you stop blaming your upbringing, your parents, or society in general, and you want to take responsibility. But that is another big and heavy step to take, because you realize that you failed yourself. You disappoint yourself in a makes you feel like not good enough. Am I enough? Am I worthy to be a parent? And how am I going to break the cycles with my own children? And that's one of the things that I teach my sons as well. They're very aware of what single motherhood entails in our home. And I teach my sons, before you have children, you need to commit to a woman. And one of those ways to do that is to get married. I'm not particularly traditional or religious per se, but maybe if I had been, my life wouldn't be the way it is, right? So it's always a work in progress, and how you can increase yourself and your mindset and your shift emotionally and psychologically to improve. So at least if you can't get to the step where you want to be, you have already helped pave the way for your children. So
Yeah, I remember early on in our coaching, I would tell you things that I knew were painful, and
mhm.
I started to understand your personality and that you like to hear things very directly, and so I was able to do that. And you know, most women, you have to almost beat around the bush for half an hour for a 5 minute conversation because they can't handle it directly, because they're very, very sensitive to the shame and to the feelings of unworthiness. And when I remember telling you some things, and I could see you were like, ouch, that hurts. And I made sure that you understood it was coming from a place of care and concern. And so it was that kind of cushions the blow a bit. But it is painful to recognize that we made fundamental errors in how we managed our lives at some point. And however, if we avoid that pain, we just end up with the pain of continuing to make mistakes. And basically, we have to pick which pain is going to be more palatable to us: the pain of facing reality and changing, or the pain of continuing to bump our head against the same problems over and over again.
That's right. That's right. And ultimately, I think every parent has their child's best interest at heart. I feel that if we are mindful enough or conscientious enough of how our decisions and our actions may hinder our children, some of us take the responsibility of raising children very, very seriously. It is like our ultimate um, purpose in life for that time period, at least for women. I'm not sure how it is for men, but for women in that regard. So if we want to increase the well-being for them as well, or at least not get in the way of them growing, then there's definitely a few fundamentals that we have to understand. One of them is our responsibility in the position where we are, accepting where we are due to some of our perhaps lack of knowledge or not having proper guidance, and then also understanding the dynamics of the sexes in our children. I'm a single mother raising two boys. The way the male brain works and the female brain works is very, very complementary, but opposite in some ways. So I couldn't raise my children the way I feel. I have to be able to understand how they're structured to really benefit them, and I truly believe that women cannot raise boys to become men. Only men can influence boys to become men. But I think that as a woman, we are able to teach them about women, how to treat them, how to understand them, and what we can do, what they are capable of doing in that realm. So again, it's complementary. And for women who find themselves raising children that maybe are hitting their preteens and perhaps are older now, where they may not want to have more children, or they're not sure if they want to get married, I really encourage to reach out to the community of men. Something I did last year was reach out to my local fishing community and spoke to some of the men and said, I'm looking for someone who maybe has children, goes out fishing with their family, if maybe we could tag along so that my children can get experiences of what men do until I feel that I'm ready to move forward and get married and find a man who is willing and capable to be a greater influence on my children's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that you asked that is very interesting, because one of the things, there are single mothers who seem to have learned from their mistakes and are moving forward and making better decisions. And then there's the ones that haven't learned anything. And one of the things I see with the ones that haven't learned anything is a very strong sense of entitlement. Someone's got to help my kids. Someone's got to take care. Who's going to pay my bills if I don't pay them? And it's very much this sense of the world owes me a living.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to a certain extent, what it is it's simply immaturity. it's a lack of maturity, and agency and maturity often look a lot alike.
Mm-hmm.
You can't become mature without developing a high sense of agency. It's not a one-to-one overlap in the Venn diagram, but there's a lot of overlapping skills required. And the women that understand um, what's going on and are really making the smart decisions, they go to this with a more of a humble attitude of, yes, I need help, especially if you have sons. I need help. I need someone to be a male influence for my sons, and I need to ask for this in a way that is, not demanding, the way that you show, the way that is it's classy. It is, can you help? Because you'd be surprised how much most men want to help people in general.
Mm.
Men tend to be extremely helpful. And when they see needs, they want to help, but they're very turned off by senses of entitlement. They will help, they will do a lot of work for mere gratefulness.
Mm.
And especially if they understand, oh, there's some friends for my sons, and they have this opportunity to be a good man by doing a good thing, by doing a good deed. A lot of guys will go for that, but this needs to be within a context where they're feeling like they're not, this isn't being demanded of them, this is being asked of them, and they're having a chance then to have some sort of gratefulness over it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love how you said how agency and maturity kind of go hand in hand and almost blur the lines. And I agree. I think with women who have this kind of entitlement attitude, it's fear. It's purely fear. It's fear of being vulnerable. It's fear of being seen. It's fear of their shame being exposed, because they have spent so much time living their life doing things that are actually counterintuitive to their womanhood. And most women who
Mm-hmm.
end up single mothers don't plan their children. It's, you get a boyfriend, you do the things that you do, and then sometimes the child thing just kind of happens. And again, it's just general terms, there are exceptions, but all of a sudden she has this major responsibility and she's alone and she doesn't have much time to invest for herself. So this abrasiveness of, I'm a woman and you should take care of me, but women don't understand that you need to invest. Let's say you have a child, or you have three, and you are in your 20s, you are still young, you are still beautiful, you are still healthy. With a little bit of proper influence or even coaching, you have the opportunity to meet a high agency man who will love you if you get some training in femininity, if you get some training in vulnerability, if you get some training in the understanding of the sexes between the dynamics. You have the opportunity where a high agency man on average isn't just going to come into your life and start taking care of everything without getting anything in return, which is mainly appreciation, which is respect, which is being submissive to a particular degree, because he will be responsible for you. And if you're constantly combating him because you think you know everything, then it will make him question, what are you doing? Like, if you know everything, then what do you need me for? Right?
Exactly.
We have to be able to learn how to invest in return into our relationship with our partner, with our husbands, or our partner that leads to marriage, and allowing him, if he doesn't have children, he may want some of his own. When you are still young, you still have the opportunity to build something grand. For women who are a bit older, they may not be the particular group where you can start a life with, but perhaps you find men who have had children, who have had some similar situations, how being a single parent or something of that nature has matured them a lot, and they may be in a group for that second phase of life where you may not be starting from the beginning, but you could sometimes join together, or when the children are a bit older, there's like a different dynamic to it, right? So there's tons of opportunity for personal growth and getting the things that you want without feeling that it's not possible for you. But it does require some personal work. It requires some sacrifice, requires some self-reflections, and probably a few tears, because it requires self-forgiveness as well. So
And I think one of the things that is difficult for people to understand, and one of the keys to agency, is being able to admit even painful realities. And one of the things that's difficult for a lot of single mothers to hear is that having children lowers your sexual market value. It
Mm-hmm.
makes for a lot of men, it's just no go. They're just not going to date a single mother. There are a lot of men who are open to dating a single mother, just not the stereotypical, ungrateful, self-entitled, hasn't learned anything from her past experiences single mother.
That's right.
On the other hand, I know women who were close to 40, had a couple of kids, and they still got remarried. And the key to it was all those things you mentioned. They
Mm-hmm.
got coaching, they improved their femininity. And that, partially that's physical, learning how to dress better, to getting in better shape and whatnot. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is attitude as well. Learning how to follow a man's lead, learning how to be a good woman. And that is actually a real lack of good women. Most of the good women are already married. And so if you're a man and you find yourself single and you're in your 40s, where are you going to find a good woman who's, unless you're going to go marry a 20-year-old? And honestly, most guys couldn't physically keep up with a 20-year-old, most 40-year-old men. I'm in pretty good shape, and my friends are all younger than me, so I have to keep up with them. And I got a couple of little kids, but I'm not most 40-year-olds. Most 40-year-olds are like my grandfather's generation, 60-year-olds. And so men aren't going to want to marry a woman. They may want to, but they're not going to be able to keep up with a woman who's 20 years younger than them. They might look at a woman who's 5 or 7 years younger. That woman, either she's going to be a single mother, or there's something about her that has made her never get married before.
Mm-hmm.
And either of those two things are potential issues. However, the single mother, just like anyone else, she can work on that and she can offer value that compensates for that having of children. She can
Mm-hmm.
be such a high value woman that it doesn't matter that she has a couple of kids. She's still sufficiently attractive to attract a good man. And I've seen it happen before, and people will say, that's impossible. I've seen it happen. The men they married were high quality men, they were good men, and they were willing to raise someone else's kids because that woman was of sufficient value that it was worth investing in her. And that is hard to believe for some people. But often the people that are complaining about don't marry single women, they're not married to any woman or dating any woman or even in a position where they could get married to a woman. And those aren't the kind of people's advice. Don't take advice from anons on the web or people who you don't know have a happy and healthy relationship. Go to the people that have had a healthy relationship. Talk to people who have helped single mothers. That's who you want to talk to. And if you are a man and you're thinking of marrying a single mother and you're not sure if she's done the work she needs to do to make sure she doesn't become a single mother again with one of your kids, talk to someone like Michelle or myself. We know the questions to ask for you to ask yourself. We know how you can help yourself to figure that out. And that's not something you should walk into blindly. It is a much bigger decision when you marry a single mother than when you marry a single woman who's never had kids. For obvious reasons. You're also taking on her children as your responsibility. They're going to live with you in your house probably, although I've seen couples where they maintain separate houses. And he doesn't do any parenting of the kids. He's kind of like an uncle.
Yeah.
There are different things that work for different people.
I think that's great. I think with men who are interested in seriously dating a mother who already has children or a woman who already has children, this is something that's going to take more time than if you were dating somebody who didn't have children. Because one of the things is that she has been raising the children probably 2/3, maybe 90 or 100% of the time on her own. So she has a particular way of doing things. And she is in the hierarchy scale, she is the top boss. Now, because we live in a society where, unfortunately, men have been demonized, as soon as a man decides to take the lead in a more firm way, many women are saying or thinking or feeling, oh my God, predator, I'm not safe. And personally, I have the mindset that, yes, I want a man who's highly dangerous. I want a man who will do whatever he needs to do, but that I feel safe with. That if I invest in him properly and he understands and there's a dynamic where that works well, then I have safety, my children have safety, or I should say protection, right? So women have to ask themselves, how ready are they to actually commit and become a family? If you're just looking for a man to have some fun with and to kind of pay your bills and to somebody to follow your lead, you're not ready for a relationship. And you're essentially wasting time from someone else. You're stealing time from them. As for men, I think one of the biggest things that, we discuss is that when you are coming in, there needs a longer time for you to establish the lead. It requires more patience. It requires more firmness, and also setting boundaries that still show that you care and that the woman and the children feel nurtured, right? So one part is receptivity on the woman's part, and one part is penetration on the man's part. So for men, it just takes a little bit longer, because as the trust builds, because you're taking on two people minimum, if she's got more children, then there's more people involved. And these are all dynamics that have to be worked through time and time again, where it will build their trust. They can depend on you. They feel safe. And then after a while, the power shift between who's leading and who's calling the shots, so to speak, is going to shift towards the masculine, towards the man. And that's where he can start to really implement what works for the family, because he's put in the time to see how everybody works and how everything can work together.
Yeah, Margot brings up an interesting point. She says if she was a single mother, she wouldn't want to have a strange man in their lives. And I think what you described is really key. He shouldn't be a stranger by the time he's getting introduced to the kids. The mother should know him well enough to have that trust. And it is a big difference building trust when there's two of you compared to when there's three or more. And, as a father, I've seen the process since infancy, since the day they were born, building trust with my sons so that I can give them advice, I can discipline them, I can say, that's a bad idea, don't do that. I can point to the little babies and they're going to do something, I can point to it and I go, no, danger, don't do that. And they go, oh, okay, yeah, Dad was right the other times, I think I'm going to listen to him. And you can't walk into a family and immediately have that level of respect, that level of authority. Authority is something that is built up and earned because it's a type of trust. Real authority comes from trust, and trust takes time to build. Anyone who gives their trust foolishly, who immediately says, I trust this person, I mean, that's probably part of the way they got to be a single mother in the first place.
That's right.
Trusting too quickly. And so it's natural for them to now be more careful about learning to trust, because they're learning those lessons. They're not following the same path that got them where they are. That's not what's going to take them out.
Yeah, it's ultimately learning discernment and using good judgment, right? And I definitely appreciate Margot's comment, because when you're a single mother, you have to ask yourself, what do you want to get into a relationship for? Like, what are the motives? What is it that you need? What is it that you want? And where are you compromising yourself? If you're just out there dating, then yeah, you should definitely not get into bringing men, or anybody for that matter, anybody that you don't know, because anybody could be a potential problem for your family. But if you feel that, I would like to be married, I would like to have a partner, I would like to have influence for my children, and there could be lots of reasons. It could be that you have a lot of love to give and you want something more out of life. Then you take the proper avenue, whether it's combination of reading books and working on yourself and getting coaching to learn how to find the proper mate that will complement you and your family based on what your capabilities are. And then if you do, let's say, get coaching, there are definitely certain steps you can take that will give you a higher chance of success for finding a mate, where when a woman does fall in love and she does have that masculine person in her life and her children feel safe and secure, it's such a beautiful thing, like something that I look forward to implementing for myself, right? So it's all about, where's your mind going? What is it that you want? If you feel like, I've been hurt so much that I don't want to let any man near my kids, I don't know, now may not be the time to date and pursue potential marriage. But I would stay away from the dating game altogether, because at some point you're going to view every man as a potential threat. And you have to think about your children as well. Like, what is good for them? What do they need? And boys need masculine roles in their life. Women, or excuse me, daughters do as well, because they need to feel that sense of protection. But again, a mother cannot turn her boy into a man. Only men can do that for boys. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. You mentioned something that is interesting. If you start off on, I don't feel safe, and you that can easily get into a trap where your fear level just keeps building.
mhm,
And generally, no matter what it is, fear builds where there's a lack of exposure. So
mhm,
where there's exposure to something, we get mastery, and from mastery comes a sense of a lack of fear. If you are excellent at speaking with men, judging men, figuring out which men are good and not good, and if a woman becomes skilled at that, and I would say most young women are terrible at that, but most women get better at that as they age, and they can get quite young. This is why if you have a good relationship with your mother and your mother is making good decisions and she got good at that, that's someone you can go and run your boyfriends by and ask. Besides your
mhm.
father, the mother can give a good opinion as well. But that takes time. That's a skill that develops, and you won't develop it if you're so afraid of men that you don't ever spend any time around them. And you're right. You mentioned before that single mothers hang around with single mothers,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of good reasons for that. Married women don't want their husband around single mothers because they feel threatened by it. And
Mhm,
so this is why it's been very good for a lot of people, for example, to be in a church where there can be an environment there where there's a good, strong reminder of proper boundaries and proper roles so that people don't get the wrong kind of idea when
yeah.
you're helping people. And that's one way that can help to maintain that. But that's something that's important too. If your sons are getting mentored by a married man, um, for single mothers to make sure that they're not making that man's wife uncomfortable
Mhm,
unintentionally often. Jealousy is not always a rational thing. Sometimes it comes from irrational places as well. So they want to make sure there's not that kind of thing. But you are right that boys always need a male role model. They need
yeah.
masculine roles. They need men that they can look up to. And that doesn't necessarily have to be their father. Throughout history, a lot of men died before their kids were raised. We
Mm,
used to have, plague comes along, kills half the population. It doesn't kill entire families. It tends to kill random people from each family. And
mhm,
so you'll have families where there's no husband, no father, or no mother, and so that blending together back again of families and that process of working together again, and boys getting adopted essentially by other men. There are men out there who have 3 or 4 daughters and no sons, and they crave having some young boys to take fishing and camping and do kind of like guy stuff. Maybe the
mhm.
girls aren't interested in that. Maybe they're real girly and they don't want to go camping. And you find a guy like that, and this might be his opportunity to get his fatherly desire to have sons and have a chance to kind of practice that.
Mhm,
There are young men out there who are great mentors. I mentor some young men who in turn were mentoring even younger men.
yeah,
And they're great guys. I would trust them quite a bit. I know them very well from the hours that I've spent mentoring them.
yeah,
And that's another option as well. But very often going to a church can help with that, or a conservative type of social organization. Doesn't have to be a church necessarily,
mhm.
but that's where we're going to find that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely love how you touched base on married men and their wives wanting their husbands to stay away from single moms, because women will naturally gravitate towards a man who's very masculine. So you're at the park with your children and there's a dad there with his children, and your son gets hurt and he comes over and asks, oh, is he okay? And conversations start. And when men take care of women, whether it's on a personal level, on a social level, women gravitate toward that because we want to be taken care of. So it's not that we're trying to steal anybody away, but it's just like a natural chemistry. It's very organic that it happens. So married women have every reason to be a little bit weary of such motivations if the husband doesn't have strong boundaries or high agency in that sense. I had a point there somewhere, but I forgot. So yes, the
Well, I
single
think
mom.
you brought up something important. He shouldn't be there to take care of the single mom. He's there to help the children.
Exactly. Yes, it is not. That's right. The married woman did not agree for him to take care of other people. We have our family. There should definitely be some boundaries. And I think that even though single mothers may desire something like that, there's definitely things that they can do to help them get those things as well, right? So there's very firm boundaries, and I don't think those two should be mixed.
Yeah, that's very wise advice. And I think that's something that I've never seen that talked about publicly anywhere, but I've had this same conversation privately, and I've heard this conversation happen at church and other places privately, always,
Yeah.
my entire life. I remember hearing this when I was a little kid because there was always some single mothers around, and my family tended to be one that helped all the other families around us. It was kind of their way of ignoring their own problems, but they helped everybody else around, and so we always had like anywhere between 3 and a dozen stray children living at our house, so that their parents or maybe it was a single mother could have a break. And there was always that reminder to be careful of the boundaries. So
That's right.
it really is a smart thing. And if you are a single mother and you want help, being very careful with those boundaries, you're more likely to get the help for your children that they need.
That's right. Yeah. And especially if you're thinking in terms in long term as well, that, you know what, I would like to be married one day. And if you're working towards building that kind of social community for yourself, like I've definitely taken a step back over the last few years from a lot of single mothers because they have this mentality that, we can do anything and we're doing everything and we don't need men. And this is not, it doesn't resonate with me, so I started meeting people who are more family oriented, who are more marriage minded, and I don't stay alone with the men. If the wife isn't home, I don't enter the home. I don't text or call the man or anything like that or ask him for his help. And if I happen to meet the husband first, I always want to encourage and make it known that I would like to know their wife as well. That this is not a friendship between the two of us. Not that it can never happen, but we kind of live in a society where infidelity is rampant, and it can happen with the smallest things. So if I'm interested, if I think that you're a wonderful man, you're a wonderful person, I want to know your family. I want our children to play together. I want to become friends with your wife and see if all that jives. And I think as wives, when they feel that, here is no threat, here's a woman who's similar minded as us, perhaps a traditional or religious and whatnot, they're a bit more receptive to including you, as opposed to just a single mom who says that, I don't need men, and because I've been hurt so much and I don't trust it, and just kind of carrying this victim mentality that needs rescuing, which is not a married man's job.
Yeah, and it is interesting that the people I don't need no man, I've been hurt so many times. It's interesting because those two sentences are actually opposed to each other. I
Mhm.
don't need no man, but I've been hurt. I've been hurt by so many of them.
Yeah.
If you didn't need them, how did they hurt you?
And they're the first ones to call the man for help that
Yeah,
doesn't belong to them, right? Usually
exactly.
it's high agency men that have marriages, that have children, that have their affairs in order. Again, it's the things that women fear the most is also what they desire the most. So
Yes, and there's to a lot. I've seen this with a lot of women that the thing they say they don't want, it is really the thing that they want.
yeah.
And you'll notice because it's not like a cool, calm, emotionless. Oh yes, no, thank you. I don't want one of those. It's more like, I don't need it. Who are you trying to convince? Myself. you know, um, that is, and it's pretty obvious. And the more they shout no, the more that means that actually they really do want that man. And that is a warning sign. And women understand women. They know which women are not safe to be around their community, around their husbands. And I've been in communities where they said, like I've visited communities where they said, yeah, we don't really let single women because of all the drama. Sorry, single mothers, because of all the drama that it causes between the wives and the single mothers. And so don't be that kind of single mother. I think this is the problem. Single mothers are lumped in as one big group. Okay. And I think early on, there's a lot of similarity in what ends up happening with single mothers. There's, almost always a lack of a fatherly role model that can help them make decisions. Sometimes they have a good dad, but he's not wise about relationships, or they have a dad who's, he's not a bad person. He's just kind of not there in one way or another. There's this combination of lack of masculine protectiveness in them, and they end up making very similar decisions. However, once they've made those decisions, then things start to change a lot and kind of bifurcate. They either go all the way in on lack of responsibility and they just keep digging their hole deeper, or they start to work their way out of it.
Yeah.
And it's usually they pick one direction.
That's right. And I think it really comes down to if you have perhaps multiple children over a long period of time, you feel exhausted, or you have this kind of hardness about you where you've been providing, you've been protecting, you've been nurturing, and taking on all these different aspects where some of those aspects are not naturally yours, at least not for the long term. I don't enjoy firmly disciplining my sons. I don't like being hard on them. I don't like raising my voice at them at times. Not that happens a lot, but I don't want to be like this kind of aggressive where I have to, I don't want to say act like a man, but where I have to establish my dominance, because raising sons, their mind is hierarchy minded. And if I don't establish my dominance and I don't put my foot down, they're going to run all over me. They're not going to respect my boundaries when I say, no, thank you, I don't want to be touched right now. And they're hanging on me. Like, there has to be a level of firmness, but women want to nurture. They want to be soft. They want to be sweet. And if I'm constantly in a masculine mindset of I have to be, I don't want to say guarded, but established in my dominance, then I never get to be the opposite. It's very tiring for the brain. And over the long term, it can really wear on a woman.
That's actually a really good point. A lot of people say, well, I was raised by a single mother and she had to be both a mother and a father. You can't be both a mother and a father. You're going to fill one role or the other. Now, you might be able to fill the mother role. A single mother can fill the mother role really well. She can't fill the father role very well, but she can't fill two at once either. And especially with boys, but as children get older, they need the father role more than the mother role. They need less nurturing, and now they need more directions.
Right.
They need more help in, you could say it's like a tree. At first, you just want the tree to grow as fast as it can, and then there comes a point where you want to prune away what isn't correct for the tree. Things that aren't growing right on the tree. So you want your kids to grow, you got to nurture them. Then there comes a point where you work with them to prune away negative behaviors, to allow the good behavior to flourish. That is a very masculine thing to do, that pruning. I mean, you don't prune a tree by, caressing it. You chop pieces of it off. And we almost I was boxing in the park yesterday with my son. I was boxing with my friends, and my son was there, and he kept insisting on standing in the middle where we were boxing. We tripped on him a couple of times, and I had to forcibly remove him from the area, because he wasn't listening. He was going to get hurt, and he was not happy with that. And I've seen my wife in similar situations where he's in the way, and she just keeps asking him to move until she comes to me and says, Noah, he's not listening. Can you come and get him to listen? And it's normal. It's normal. He's almost 8 years old. And at that point, kids stop wanting to listen to mother.
That's right. I noticed it with my own son too, who's going to be 8 not too long from now. It's just that, safety is non-negotiable. And that's one of the things that's kind of like a key phrase with my son, that when we're kind of going back and forth, we both like to banter a bit. And I'm not overly feminine in the sense where, I've definitely learned a balance between when I need to put my foot down and when I can be a bit more, practice more temperance with my son. But when something happens similar to your situation, and I tell him safety is not negotiable, that's the end of discussion. And he knows that there's nothing he can say after that. It's just going to escalate to the point where I'm going to tell him, you know what, you need to excuse yourself, or I'm going to excuse myself, because we're just going back and forth, and it's not helping. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think mothers can definitely take on the more firm aspect of raising parents or being a disciplinarian, but if they do it long term, they kind of get in this habit where they start to feel they can do everything themselves, and it takes away from the grace of what they can be. So even if they meet somebody new and they meet a man, that man would have to be much more masculine than what the mother had to do during that time of raising her children by herself, right? So
Yeah, that's an underappreciated factor, is that filling a more masculine role in your family's relationship, because there isn't a man, actually masculinizes the woman. And
mhm.
that's extremely bad for the woman psychologically, and it's actually bad for your health. It
Yes.
messes with your hormones, does all kinds of stuff like that. And like you said, if you want to now meet a man, what ends up often happening is the women that have masculinized themselves only find themselves meeting more feminine minded men,
Mm.
because we tend to attract our opposite. And if they've gone over that like midpoint, or they'll be just slightly on the feminine side of the spectrum, and they're going to meet men that are just slightly on the masculine side, and they're not going to be happy with that, because a woman wants a pretty big gap. Women, more even than men sometimes, want a pretty big gap between them in the sexual dimorphism. They want that gap because it's nice for women to have someone bigger and stronger and more aggressive and more masculine, and that's going to make them feel. One woman said to me, she says, I want my man to make me feel little and tiny and protected, and she can kind of curl up on him. And that
Mhm.
is that's almost universal. Very few women are like, yeah, I really like weak men. That's just not a thing. I don't even hear that from feminists.
They're lying to
I mean,
themselves.
but I don't even really hear it from feminists. Even they prefer usually a strong man. They just take what they get because they can get a strong man.
Yeah.
But it is harder for women to attract the right kind of man, the man they really want, and the kind of man that's going to be good for their children if they've been filling that father role. It is a very difficult situation to be in.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I mean, one of the things that I know has helped a lot of women is putting their sons into male only spaces
Mhm.
where there is a hierarchy and discipline. Unfortunately, Boy Scouts doesn't have that anymore. This is why it is so evil to take these male only organizations and
Mm.
destroy them by making them co-ed. There are smaller organizations that have maintained the traditions, and they're much better. Some kids, they go to martial arts, which is almost, I mean, you can pick what you want. Go in, and if all the instructors are women, then that's not where you send your son. Go find some place where it's a bunch of masculine men, and they're lifting weights and punching each other, and your son's going to learn how to be a man in there. And if he's an old enough boy, he's going to fit in with that environment, and it
Mhm.
will do a lot for him. And then you don't have to do that.
That's
I
right.
thought it was interesting. I took my son to kickboxing, and he likes to try to be the boss everywhere he goes. He's very, very dominant. And he's telling the guy, the class might be better if we did like this and this. And the guy's like, stand there. You're not in charge. You're not the teacher here. I'm the teacher. You need to stand there, shut up, and listen to me. And I was like, oh, good, good, good. Because I will put him in his place. And so now, we work well together because the hierarchy's been established.
Mhm.
But he's developed that ability then to do that with other people is very important. I even think that boys that are raised with good fathers need to also be exposed to other men who, you know, you're not my kid and I don't owe you niceness.
That's right.
So get in line, because they need to experience that, because that's, you know, you become a mid to late teens, as soon as you stop looking like a cute little kid, and you're a man, you get no pity from anyone. And all of a sudden, life just falls on you hard.
Yeah.
And if you accept that, then you become a very strong man.
Yeah.
If you expect to be treated like you're a cute kid all the time, it's just women can get away with that. They can get away with it until they're not cute anymore. But guys can't, And
Yeah.
let your son, hey, even if you're a father and you're a good masculine guy, I'm some of my friends, I'll let them teach my son stuff sometimes, and it's not their kids, so they don't have that much, nearly as much patience as I do,
Yeah.
and it makes a great contrast for him to see, wow, dad's actually really patient, and yeah, I think I better listen more when dad talks, because otherwise I'm going to get sent over here to learn,
And I think
and it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also honing the social skills within that hierarchy, right? So if, like you said, there are a lot of co-ed spaces and we share some similar views as far as there should be female only spaces and male only spaces, because the truth is men act a little bit different when there's a female around, and vice versa. If there's a very masculine man coming into the group, all the women, they all perk up and they're like, oh, they're all of a sudden pretty and feminine and laughing, and it's very interesting to watch. But I agree, for children, that they should be more spaces available pertaining to their sex. I'm not going to say gender, because that will open up a whole nother conversation. But I would just like to say that, I don't advocate for single motherhood. I don't have this belief that it is something that is super great and yeah, you can do it all by yourself. I definitely gear towards coaching single mothers learning agency. So how do you get into better control of yourself? How are you able to control your environment? And I don't mean control as in dominate, but influence and be persuasive and have grace. There's some training in feminine aspects, understanding what the female is and how it can benefit, some archetype work, and also pursuing long-term goals as far as making the whole unit for a family. Right. So yes, single motherhood is awful, not only from a social perspective, but also from an individual aspect. It's very, very demanding, and we don't do our children justice being a single parent. They deserve to have community around them so that they can learn about the world from different perspectives. Because like you said, if they grow up with mom or just dad for a certain amount of time, and then they hit that age, for example, boys hit their preteens, teens, and they get into this more hierarchical, they want to hang out with their friends, they want to get into the world. They're not going to be as prepared to handle the blows because they've been constantly nurtured. There was nobody there to, punch them in the face, so to speak, to be rough and tumble with them. And if a woman is too rough and tumble for too long of a time, it can also decrease her opportunity, or at least take a longer time for her to remold coming back into the feminine if she were to engage with a masculine man. So
one of the things too, I think, that's underestimated is that when the mother has to fill a very masculine role, that also warps the son's view of what a feminine woman is.
Yeah.
And we tend to, boys tend to idolize their mother and their father. You tend to idolize your parents. I mean, they created you. They're kind of like a god to you because, you exist because they decided to make you exist.
Yeah.
And so you tend to look up to them and you tend to idolize them. And then we tend to look for a partner that's similar to our opposite sex parent.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want is we want our boys to go out and find feminine, soft, gentle women so that they can fill their role of being the masculine, strong, good boundary setting tough men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult when their pattern that they've seen is a mother that is going between soft and hard and soft and hard. And it makes it difficult for them to know what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm gonna point out something. So Margot asked, do you think every young man should get a beating at least once in their life? Look, I was with my friends today punching each other. I don't think it's like a one-time thing. I think you should be doing this fairly often. And my son today went for, we homeschool, but he did the first day of like a summer school that he's going to go to when he feels like it, like when they go on school trips. they went on a trip to the zoo. He comes home. Yeah, I beat a kid up today. Some kid way bigger than him, nearly the size of my wife. Picked a fight with him, and my son beat him up, I guess. And so, yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good for young boys to get in fights and test themselves. Um, Probably, if there's adults around, they're not going to get any serious injuries. But it's good for them to test out their power when they're young, so that isn't, first of all, so they're not afraid of fighting, so that they understand what it is, and second of all, so they respect the ability to hurt other people, and that they don't use it inappropriately.
Yeah.
My son's been taking some martial arts classes. He's very strong as well, and so he'll hit me, and I'll hit. I won't hit him with full force, but we'll hit each other a little bit, boxing, usually with gloves. Then he'll go and he'll like smack his mom on the leg like he smacked me on the leg, and of course she's like ouch and limping away, and I'm like, you can't hit your mother like that. I say to him, you can't hit my wife like that. I don't let people hit my wife, and it doesn't matter if it's your mother, it's my wife.
Yeah, that's
respect
right.
my wife.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's good for him because I can see the light go on in his head and go, oh, he'll come back to me and go, I understand. Girls aren't as hard as boys, and you have to play more gently with them. Like, yes, you understand. Good boy. And it's, guys shouldn't figure that out in their teens.
Yeah. No, not when the hormones are rampant. But I also I would like to clarify, for single mothers who may be first listening about this kind of perspective and the things that we're discussing. When I take my sons to the park and they've made some, because we recently relocated to their city, they've made some new friends, and they have a couple of good friends, especially my oldest, where every single time they go to the park, they wrestle. They don't want to run. They don't want to climb. They don't want to swing. They don't want to play in the water. They want to wrestle. And I don't encourage my son to be physical with other people, but I don't get in the way of it either. I monitor, I assess it in case things get maybe a little bit too rough where somebody could potentially get hurt. But I want single mothers to understand, who are not familiar with why boys tend to, insult each other, perhaps do a little bit of shit talking and do a little bit of wrestling, is because they are honing that instinctual combative skill. And it starts from very young. That's why when women say, oh my God, why do you guys talk to each other like that? Why do you guys always have to fight? This is not a meanness. This is not to hurt anybody. They are testing each other's boundaries and honing that skill, because when they go out into the world and they are very feminized, when another masculine man, tells them even just a simple truth, an effeminate man cannot handle that. They will be defensive, they will be sensitive, they will mope, they might come home and complain to their woman, which, you shouldn't bring. This is like female behavior. That shouldn't happen. So I always recommend, even if my son makes friends with new kids and they end up wrestling, sometimes I hear other moms like, oh, don't do that, and don't do that, and stop it. And I encourage them, how about we let them fight a little bit, battle a little bit, so that they can hone those skills, because one day they will be our protectors. You can't cry that you can do everything a man can do, but when you get hit in the face by a boyfriend that you chose wrongly, you call the police. Those are men too. They're coming to protect you as well. The judge who's a man that puts that man in jail is a man too, right? So we don't want to disrespect the patriarch, the great patriarch that will end up being our protectors. So we have to allow our sons and not get in the way, hone the skills that instinctually come to them.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about raising sons with single mothers and what they can do to mitigate the lack of a father. We haven't talked very much about daughters, and we should do that a little bit. Neither you nor I have daughters, but I had a lot of cousins growing up, so I had a lot of familiarity with, how girls are developing, the kinds of issues that they end up getting. And my experience is that when they're little, they're easier, and then they get older, they're harder than boys. It kind of flips around puberty. Yeah. And one of the things that women that I have coached in the past that have had difficulties in life in general, that's quite consistent, is the sense of never having been completely safe because of not having a father figure to protect them. And I
Yeah.
don't necessarily mean physically safe, although that's how they will express it that way. But it really is also an emotional safety. It
Yes.
is a decision-making safety. I think most young people are terrible at deciding on who they should be, their partner should be, who they're going
Mm.
to marry or whatever. I
They
think
should
they're,
be dating scene at all.
yeah, parents and elders in the community should be the ones that help, people under 25 to get married because most people are terrible at making decisions at that
Yeah.
point. And I'm for young youth marriage. I'm for people getting married young when their families are solid and they have this great, wealth of high agency people around them to make sure they make a good decision. But
Hmm.
what someone says, I think Margot has daughters as well. So daughters are terrible as teens, and
Oh,
then once they reach their early 20s, when they reach their early 20s, they become best friends.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, there was a mention here that yeah, it's easier when they're 7. It's easier when she's 7, and by the time she gets to puberty, then now you'll feel it. It'll be the difference. You'll see the flip.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, also Margot says I'm all for arranged marriages. I agree with that. I'm also for arranged marriages, but arranged in the way where, um, dear, these are 3 men that are in our community, and pick one. You don't like any? Okay, we'll have to go find some more for you. As opposed to you must marry this person. It's more about limiting choices until all the options are really good options.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of young people that are really pro on that. They're like, if you could find me someone that would be a good option, I just go with what you suggested. Now that's not really possible for me to do that, but that concept of people with enough humility realize that if they're young, it's very difficult to make that decision, what who they're going to marry. And I think for young girls, it's not just that; it's all of the decisions.
Yeah.
They don't have a. There are a lot of. I've met predatory men that say, "Go for the daughters of the single mothers because those are the ones that are easy.
Oh,
Those are the ones that we can run game on and fool and trick."
that's horrible.
Basically, that's how they create more single mothers, and it's horrible. It is, as a man, that really sets me off. Like I really don't like that as a protective type of man.
Mm.
Now I can imagine if you have a daughter, that's going to be a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
You mess with my daughter, you're messing with me. Um, those girls that don't have that, they need to have other structures of protection. Very often, a church is an excellent structure for protecting them.
Yeah.
It gives them a framework so that they can do some of the heuristics that they would have got through a father. So the
Yeah.
father will help them to know what a good man is. Well, they can go and they can say, well, look, there's 30 couples in my church. Almost all of them, it's good men married to good women.
Yeah.
And that means the church has a pretty good heuristic about picking good men or allowing good men in here. I can probably trust the men that are in here as at least a starting point for my search,
Yeah.
for a husband. And that really makes a big difference. Even nowadays, it's like the daughters of single mothers seem to be the ones going to college at almost 100% rate. And
Yeah.
some of the daughters have said to me, well, I was raised by a single mother. And she was like, you can't need no man because they're unreliable, or at least the ones
Mm.
I pick are. And so you better go get your college education. And off they're going and they're getting their college education. And if they had a father, he would go, you really don't want to do that, do you? I mean, like, tell me what you really want. I have these conversations. Sometimes the mothers get me to have conversations with their daughters about this.
Mm.
And the mothers almost always want me to convince them to go to college. And I don't really care what the mother wants. I want what's good for the girl. And I'll say to her, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And these young women, they don't know what they want. They will say, well, my mother told me. My school counselor said I should. Well,
Hmm.
they said this was the best course to take. Yeah, but I don't want to have to rely on somebody else. You have to rely on the school to teach you, so you're always relying on somebody. And if I ask them and I dig down into it, they want the family their mother couldn't provide them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to find that at college.
That's right. With the lack of the masculine role model, what the mothers are doing is trying to ensure that their children, their daughters, don't have the same so-called struggles as they did. So they encourage, be financially independent. Don't depend on a man. Don't get married or don't have children. In my case, I received horrible, horrible advice in my teens before I even kissed my first boy. I didn't kiss my first boy until I was 18. I was pretty much a late bloomer, but my mindset going into my 20s was very much that: get an education, become financially independent, have sex before marriage, live with a man before marriage. And while I'm not traditional by sense, that advice really led me to being a single mother with 2 children, not being married, not having provision, not having protection to the degree that I would feel secure and feel comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't raise my children and I can't go into the world and do battle, but it doesn't feel natural, right? So there needs to be a reworking. Even single mothers raising daughters, yes, when they're young, it's easy because daughters look up to their moms like, you're free, you're beautiful, you're graceful. Mom, I love this lipstick. This dress is so pretty. And daughters, they look towards that and they want to emulate it. And when they come into their teen years, aside from hormones being rampant and also searching for their own independence, if they don't have a proper structure or proper guidance, then they're basically running into their 20s blindsided. And especially if she's of a good temperament, if she has agency, she's trustworthy, she's loyal, she's honest, she carries herself with integrity, she takes the high road as opposed to the low road. But being innocent leaves you as prey. So if she doesn't have a father figure or a masculine role model to give her guidance throughout the years growing up, she will be more susceptible to taking an approach where she can't be cohesive in a relationship with a man, especially if she was very promiscuous. We've seen studies and heard of women saying, I'm afraid of, being with one man for the rest of my life. If they've spent their 20s being very liberal, that they are afraid of perhaps boredom, or perhaps he'll get bored of me, or perhaps, there's so many reasons why. So it's just encouraging again.
Well, they've overstimulated their pleasure senses so much that that's actually an issue. They could actually get bored.
Yeah.
It's the same as a person that, if people don't take meth and just stop because they I'm kind of bored of meth. Like it stimulates them to the point where they can't go and find joy in anything else.
Yeah.
And so they take it until it kills them.
Yeah.
And it is extremely addictive. As I think, especially for women, because most women have lower impulse control than men because they haven't been forced to have it. Believe me, if you're a young boy, in your teens and you have low impulse control, you're going to get the crap beat out of you every day at school because you're going to be pissing people off until your impulse control improves. Boxing with my friends, the greatest way to control your impulses to blink and move out of chicken out and stuff is to get punched every time you do that. And you very quickly learn not to do it. So women aren't subjected to that slaughterhouse of pressure that young boys are that helps them to develop that. And so society needs to add on that extra sense of, hey, we'll protect you from those stupid decisions.
Yeah.
But the women who have been promiscuous, they've blown out their ability to feel excited by a single man. Yeah. And that is a really difficult thing because it tends to be like any other drug. It starts out as regular sex, and then it just progresses into things we don't want to talk about here, but it tends to progress, and it tends to get more and more extreme because people are chasing a high. They're chasing that feeling of power.
We'll probably get banned for having certain conversations on YouTube.
Yeah.
But encourage single mothers or even single fathers. This isn't just, we're just speaking from a single motherhood because that's what I niche in, but always encouraging that if you want to do the best for your children, and not just for yourself, but really for your children, to kind of change that what wasn't working for you, it comes with an inner knowing that what I'm doing it to survive, but it's not really thriving. And I think a lot of people don't understand the long-term consequences of the decision that they make today, not only for them, but how it affects their children as well, how it affects their children's future relationships. So that's why, we do coaching in agency, and I also do coaching in femininity and more traditional, if you want to call it a traditional approach for the long term, so that the children have the best chance to see the variety of perspectives and how the dynamics work between the sexes, so that as they get older, not only can they make better decisions for themselves, but they have sounding boards with people that they trust. And this is a key element for people having high agency.
Absolutely. Reach out to Michelle or myself. Our links are in the bottom below the video. And you can find Michelle as well on Twitter. And she's got her own website, and that's in Twitter as well. It's also in the links below. If you're not sure what kind of help you want, just reach out to us, DM us, talk to us a little bit, say, this is my situation. This is the kind of help I want. We'll let you know if that fits in with what we're able to offer you help with. Thank you very much, Michelle, for joining us today.
Thanks, Noah.
It's been fantastic to hear from you. I always enjoy hearing from mature feminine women. It is a real thrill to listen to people who have taken their own life in hand and decided to make it what they want it to be. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you for watching our video, and I hope it inspired you to take action in your life. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video to get more agency building content. The real secret sauce is in our newsletter. Click on the link in the video description below to sign up. I promise I won't flood your inbox, and anything that we do send you will be of high value.